So I'd like you all just to take a moment now and try and remember, where were you when you first heard about OR? Where in this kind of age path, career path, where were you when the first time you heard about what OR was?
I was choosing my degree. I read a prospectus.
Yeah, that's one.
I thought between the second and the third, somewhere over there.
Yeah?
Well, I first got introduced to linear programming when it was part of O-level maths.
Okay, so
Way
you
back,
were kind of
way back in the 70s.
So I know
Actually
exactly.
69. But then, more recently, I ended up doing a course in operational research with the Open University.
So that's great. So
Worked at Tesco, so it's more kind of
you
that
could use
area.
the workplace.
Missing out the bit in the middle.
Into the middle. So I know exactly where I was. I was 2 miles in that direction at the University of Edinburgh Careers Service, and I'd just come back from a summer of the most awful work experience. I'm not going to tell you which industry, but because I don't want you to guess the employer. But it was so disappointing. I'd come all the way through school and uni. I knew what I was going to be. Went on work experience in my second year at uni and hated it. And I came back and thought, what am I going to do? You know, this is what I was always planning to do, and I don't want to go there anymore. So I'm sitting in the careers service. I've got all the careers guides in front of me and a notepad. I'm taking notes, and I've still got the piece of paper that I was writing on when I read about OR. And it is covered in exclamation marks. I just couldn't believe all these things that a career in OR could offer you. You know, the opportunities to get into management, the decent salary, the fact that you could work on various projects and not always be working on the same thing. I just thought it was brilliant. So I thought, right, that's me. I went to class the next day and I tried to convince all of my fellow students, I found this brilliant career, we should all become operational research consultants. And it was too late, because by this point they were all applying for the accountancy graduate programs and the teacher training, and nobody else from my intake here, as far as I'm aware, went into operational research.
So what was your course?
Maths. Sorry. So I almost missed the bus for OR. I was looking in the wrong direction at other career opportunities. And that's my personal motivation for why I go into schools, why I come and do events like this. I don't mind if other people choose these other careers. You know, we need accountants, you know, in the world, so I don't mind if they pick that. But I want them to choose that over OR because they'd rather do that, not because they haven't heard about OR. So that's my motivation, but I'm obviously here on my company's time, so what's in it for my employer? Well, at BA, we've got a strong and healthy OR department, but it's always being targeted by the rest of the company, and people being picked off and pulled off into other parts of the company. So we need a healthy supply of OR graduates to fill the gaps. So that's how BA sees it. It's keeping the tap on, keeping all the OR graduates, and it's a way to really encourage that. If people don't know about OR, they won't study it, and we can't recruit them. So at BA, we tend to focus in 2 areas. We go and talk to final year OR undergraduates, and we go and talk to masters OR students, so people who are already studying OR. And the 2 things that we do there are, it's mainly about giving them examples of how they can actually apply what they're learning in the workplace, and also some recruitment opportunities. But the other key place where we focus our attention is on students who are just finishing their GCSEs and just finishing their A-levels. And it's basically where are the decision points where people are deciding, am I going to continue with maths? Because what we do there, it's not so much about this is OR in the workplace, it's about raising awareness of OR in general, to help them think about one possibility if they do keep maths as an option. We do a little bit of outreach at primary school and younger junior school level, but that's mainly about our corporate responsibility and trying to promote maths in general. We don't tend to be too OR specific at that level. So I thought I'd just talk about some examples from BA. I'll just give you a moment to read this example. Can you all read the main text box? So this is is an exercise we do with GCSE students, and if we're going to look at the kind of characteristics of it, the first thing is simplification. So obviously we don't just buy one aircraft for one route and we don't consider it in isolation. But what we're not doing here is trying to give them an exact, detailed description of what we do day to day. We're trying to give them a high level, setting the scene of what maths can be used for. Had you considered you could use maths for a problem like this? The second thing to think about is that it's really good if you can get something that's interesting. We were lucky when we did this that the Airbus and the Dreamliner were in the news. So we went into the classroom and, okay, not all of them will have heard of it, but a lot of the students were really excited to be working on things that they knew about. You know, we had an exotic route that they were going off to. And what we mainly focus on for this one is it's an exercise in data extraction. So we give the students some fake newspaper articles, some fake manufacturer product specifications, some fake bar charts, and it's about them choosing the bits of information they need. And what we're focusing on here is making a decision rather than getting an answer, because a lot of maths at school is about you do the problem, you get an answer. So we could have gone in and said, if we buy a big aircraft, how much money will we make? And they can answer it, and that's it, over with. But by saying, what should we do? Here we've got a problem, help us make a decision. They seem to they engage with that. It's not just about solving a problem anymore, it's about looking at the wider picture.
I was saying that's really important because that's putting the maths in context, and I think that's the trouble at school. They get given the problem, there's the formula to work out, there's the answer, and then they move on. They don't consider what the answer means.
And what are the implications of getting it wrong and all that?
That's it, and I think when we take OR into schools, it gets them to think about their answer and what it actually means, and gives them a really good context for their maths.
So here's the second case study I wanted to talk about. So this is a case study we do with university students, and again, simplification is an issue, because although these students have the OR techniques, which the GCSE students don't necessarily have, it's still not always possible to do a complicated OR problem in a short hour to hour workshop by hand. You could send them off with computers, but we found that things that can be done by hand and in person seem to engage the students a bit better. One of the things that we like to do with this case study is focus on the soft OR as well as the hard OR. So we get them to think about the wider issues, we get them to construct diagrams that show the interacting issues. And one of the other things that we find the universities appreciate us doing is setting up opportunities for the students to develop their business skills. So the team working, being able to influence each other, and particularly presenting back. So we always make sure that with this sort of case study, there's got to be enough time for every group to present back in it. And of course, at that level, at graduate level, we use it as a springboard for recruitment, and it's time and again when we're looking at the responses from the people who've applied for jobs with us, they quote this case study as one of the reasons why they've applied to work for us. And my third and final case study I want to talk to you about today, to have a read. So this is different to the previous two. This one's also a university level one. But whereas the other two were kind of setting the scene and high level and the maths wasn't too complicated, this one's actually demonstrating a specific OR technique, in this case revenue management. It is still a little bit simplified, so each team has one aircraft with 10 seats, so it's obviously very simplified, but it is more complicated than the previous ones. It's also different because this one's competitive, so the previous two, there's no sense of competition in them, and this one, they have to develop a strategy, like this morning's session. And with this one, because it's more complicated, we've had to develop an Excel tool that lets us, a bit like your tool this morning, putting in our guesses, you have to have a tool to put in the decisions that the students have made in order to evaluate the consequences of their decisions, because it is that bit more complicated. So I think what the key point to take from this type of exercise is that it is possible to do a proper OR case study, but you need to build some tools to take with you to facilitate that, like an Excel spreadsheet to help you get the answers quickly. So I just want to talk a bit now about sharing some of our experiences, and I'm just interested to know if you could just show of hands, how many people have done no outreach activities, or only a few?
No.
And then have done nothing, or just starting out having done a few outreach activities? Okay, so I'd say about half the room. And how many people have done a lot of outreach activities and are familiar? It's just used to giving me voice of experience. Okay, so what we're going to do, I've come up with some of the lessons that I've learned from. I put myself in the middle. I've done a fair bit over the last couple of years, but I've lots more to learn. So I've come up with some of my ideas. So there'll be some tips for people who are starting out at it, but I'd also like us to share our experiences as well. So to start off with, does anybody have any feedback on what they found students respond well to when you're doing? I'm sure you've got plenty.
The competitive aspect, I think they always seem
Do you mind if I use a speaker?
Yeah. Do you offer fun, basically?
I don't think they offer chocolate.
Well, I've always been told not to offer chocolate in schools.
Okay.
This is as far as health and safety, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you can't offer chocolate, pens, they go crazy for pen with logos on. I don't know why.
Does anyone remember Cracker Jack?
Yeah.
Done our children's program on Friday night. Cracker Jack pencils were the things.
Anybody else got any feedback from activities they've been to?
Hidden stuff, hidden that.
Yeah, thinking they're not doing real maths.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, because I found, and I found it ironic because the teenage girls who came to one of my sessions, who I think came in, heard the word game, thought, great, totally disengaged, don't have to do anything, and realised actually it was quite a lot of work. But they were the most, their inner Boudica appeared, their Bodicea, because they were the most destructive players in the game I had, which is to do with getting trucks across a minefield. But actually one of the fastest playing teams, and basically organised the others into a convoy, which I thought, yeah, this was supposed to work out. So it was interesting seeing that they were quite prepared to push things to the max, where if you can have extreme things happen.
So extreme.
Which is better than Call of Duty, they'll get much more extreme.
Okay, so we've got something kind of in action here. If I put my points up, this was actually my fourth point. No, sorry, my first point. First point is that you need interaction, but the caveat I was going to put to that is asking questions and waiting for responses does not count as interaction, because I've just tried it with you and I've had a couple of responses, and a lot of you kind of, you're a bit wary, you don't want to say, you're not sure whether you've got anything you want to say. So that's the same in classrooms. You need to get some interaction in early on, but just asking questions and expecting responses doesn't really count. You need to have something that completely distracts their attention, gets everybody thinking and actually working. Again, it's a good point to do that early on, because I went to a Maths at Work event recently. There were 3 sessions and the schools were rotating around the 3 presenters. Our first 2 sessions, the kids came in, they were interested from the start, they got on with the activity and all was great. The third group came in, and from the minute we started, hello, my name is, they were gone. They were just, including teachers, just all completely distracted. By the time we got the activity started, which was about a quarter of an hour in, they were all back on board. And I went to talk to one of the teachers, and they said the other 2 presenters talked non-stop the whole session. So they'd come into our session, they'd seen us start to talk, and they thought, oh no, another hour of just listening to somebody. So you have to get the activity in early so that they don't turn off, because they're not fortune tellers, they don't know that there's going to be something fun coming up soon. Just to quickly go through the others, small groups are good to get everybody involved, and obviously if you're going to do that you need multiple presenters because you need people to be able to move around them. Presentation activity. What we've found sometimes is that even if they're really interested in the activity, if it's got lots of steps, they'll do the first 2 and then start chatting what you're doing this weekend. And you know, just get a bit distracted. So if you can bring everybody back, bring the whole group back together, talk to them again, and send them off on the next step, they're more likely to stay engaged. We talked a little bit about presenting earlier. I kind of assumed that they wouldn't want to present in front of all their school friends, but what we found, particularly with university students, when we've run out of time and some people haven't been able to present, they're really disappointed. So I think it's probably something for the older students more than the younger, but if you're going to give people a chance to present, try and give everybody an opportunity. And be prepared to have lots of questions about your job, particularly with the primary school students and the GCSE and the A-level students, and they will all ask you how much you earn. So be prepared with an answer for that. So, making contact with schools and universities. Again, does anybody, Louise shared some just at the end of the last session. I think most of you came in to hear that. If I put ours up and then we can share any extras. So, alumni, I presume you all went to school, you know, college and university. You might not have been to university, but we all have places of education we've been that we can exploit the links that we've got. At BA, we have, as part of our corporate responsibility plan, links with local schools, particularly in disadvantaged areas. So that's, if your company has something similar, you can go through that. Or even at your children's schools or your colleagues' children's schools, that's another way in. I mentioned Maths at Work, so that was a government initiative that was run. And to be honest with you, I can't remember how we got involved in the first place, but the key thing from this is once you've done one government initiative, the rest find you. Somebody who was involved with the first one will go, oh, I'm involved in this, something new, would you like to get involved? So I'm sure Louise can put you in touch with your first one, and then the rest will just follow off the back of that.
Yeah.
And then STEM, as Louise mentioned, and she's got lots of lovely brochures out. And that's something we're about, that's our next stage at BA. We're just looking at getting people accredited as STEM ambassadors. Anybody else got any other tips?
I think where they can alive, but DSTL, I don't know if they still do it, but they used to have their ambassadors were actually part of STEM. So that was where the company was in on it. Not to the extent that we were actually giving you any leave or anything like that.
That might have changed. I know someone that works at, I think about their own company. Ignore me, pardon.
Now that's what I'm looking at doing for BA. So I've got my volunteers, and my next step is I'm going to approach our local STEM coordinator and see if I can get us all
That way
together.
it lines up, so it's not actually STEMnet who are getting us into the schools,
Yes.
it's it was a corporate person who was part of whose day job was to coordinate it, but then the actual effort was volunteer.
Well, you can do both. So STEMnet, who do the STEM Ambassadors scheme, they are an umbrella organisation, so you can become a STEM ambassador, and STEMnet get approached by schools for volunteers, or you can find your own school to go into either through your employer or personally, but you will still be covered by the STEM Ambassador programme. So it works both ways.
And I think as long as you do one a year, then you're covered. But it can be any one event of your choice. So how to choose what to take into schools. I don't know about your companies. In our OR department, whenever anybody's worked on an interesting project, we write a project highlight that goes into our little newsletter that we have. So every time I read the project highlights, I keep an eye out for something that's going to work as a good outreach activity, and I just kind of take a mental note. One thing we've used quite a lot recently is roping in the kind of crowdsourcing power of all the other colleagues in the OR department. So this tends to work better if you don't tell them why you're asking. Because if you say, I'm looking for some case studies, everyone goes, oh, if I tell her about this brilliant project that's going to make a great case study, she's going to make me do it. So they keep quiet. So what I did is I had a few sessions with groups of colleagues, and I asked them what was their proudest OR achievement this year, what was the project they feel the most proud of having achieved. And once we had a whole list of them, we then started going through and say, well, does it meet the confidentiality criteria? Does it meet the can be simplified criteria? And use that to generate ideas. One of the other things we did as well was Louise was looking for examples of different OR techniques. So we put flip charts of the names of the OR techniques around the room, and I got people to put their projects according to the technique, and this was so we could come up with some examples for Louise. But one of the really good side effects was that we realised, hang on, there's a technique here, we haven't got any projects, but this project over here, we could have done that using that technique, and so it's opened our eyes to techniques that we previously weren't using. And you can always ask the lecturer, because it's good to tie in with what they're learning anyway. Okay, so just finally, we've talked a lot about case studies and going into schools and doing examples, but what else can you do? So if your company is able to offer a work experience placement, this is incredibly valuable. We do this as much as we can, and it's because of our corporate responsibility links, we can only offer it to local schools, which can be a bit frustrating, because it's meant we've had to stop our master's work experience, but we're looking at opening that up again. You can support master's dissertations, master's projects and final student dissertations. That's another really useful thing you can do. You can provide resources, as I mentioned, for the what was it, A-level decision maths module. We were providing some examples of real-life OR problems. You can be interviewed for promotion of films, so the What is OR DVD that's coming out soon. I'm looking forward to seeing BA featuring on that one. You can do panel discussions. We found this worked really well with careers advisors. So we went to a Maths at Work event where they had people who work in maths and maths teachers and careers advisors. And the careers advisors had never heard of OR. And how are they going to tell the students there's a fantastic career called OR if they don't know it exists? And finally, profiles for websites. There's a maths careers website you can add on. So just finally, we all need to make sure there's plenty of good OR graduates graduating every year. BA recognises this and is going to continue doing what we do to try and promote OR through all levels of education. And I hope that today will have inspired you to either continue doing what you already do or to start some outreach activities of your own. Thank you very much.